thank you. I knew I was going to need you.
What if I make you the host
Okay.
and I'll be the co-host,
All
and
right.
then you should be able to hit record and it should give you that option again.
Okay, sounds good. I believe that we are recording now. Well, welcome everyone to this seminar, our monthly seminar. The talk is going to be on Islam and mental health, beliefs, research, and clinical applications. And I'm going to now share my screen with everyone. And as I said earlier, please, if you have any comments, put it in the chat box, and I'll answer them at the end of the talk. So I'm going to share my screen now. Share. And I'm going to put up my PowerPoint and get it going. And then you should be able to see the PowerPoint, and to the right-hand side, you should be able to see me. Okay, so first of all, to give you a little overview on what I'll be talking about, I'll give you a little introduction. Then we'll talk about Muslim and Christian beliefs, and then compare the differences and similarities between Muslim and Christian beliefs. Then we'll dive into research on Islam and mental health. We'll focus in on the research specifically in Muslim populations. Then we'll look at some clinical applications for treating Muslim patients, and then provide further resources that you can turn to for more information. Now, please keep your microphones on mute during the presentation because it's being recorded. But if there's an important question that you need to say, feel free to unmute your microphone and just say it. Okay, so the first slide is on the introduction. So I'm going to, my area of expertise, why am I talking about Islam and mental health? I'm a healthcare professional who has treated patients for nearly 40 years. I'm also a clinical researcher on religion and health. My name is Harold Koenig. I am not a Christian or Muslim theologian. And in fact, I have no theological training whatsoever, except that I've read the Bible repeatedly and the Quran repeatedly, and to some extent have a familiarity with the Hadith and the Sunnah. Now, I also have many, many close friends and colleagues who are Sunni or Shia Muslims. I've got over 100 peer-reviewed academic publications and books with these colleagues. I've also spent some time on the ground in the Middle East for nearly a decade, working with a really amazing team of investigators at King Abdulaziz University. Faten El-Zeiban is the lead psychiatrist who is the leader of the team, and Saad Al-Shohaib is a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, and I'll say a few words about Saad a little later. There's Haytham Tayeb, and Haytham is a neurologist there. Mohammed Selyo is a psychiatrist, as is Walid Aghamanhadi. So that's our team in Saudi Arabia. And we have done a lot of research on religion and health, but on all sorts of different topics as well. And it's been, you know, I have some of my best colleagues and friends and brothers and sisters are there. So all of that has influenced me in many different ways. Okay, so next slide is on sources of theological information that I'm going to be referring to, talking about. This is where some of this information comes from. The Quran, of course. There is a really marvelous translation of the Quran into English. It's part of the Oxford World Classics, and it's very easy to understand, and It's just a phenomenal reference. And that's where some of the scriptures that I'll be citing here are coming from. The Holy Bible International Version. There is a book that Dr. Al-Shoaib and I have written on Islam and mental health, in actually 2 books, one in 2014. It's one of the most comprehensive of the 2. It's the most comprehensive of the 2 books. And then a second one on Islam and mental health in 2017. So Dr. Al-Shoaib has helped me in writing those books, and they're available. And by the way, if some of you might be desperately writing it down or trying to get this information, if you will simply send me an email, I'm happy to send you a PDF of this presentation. So you can just relax and just listen to it and don't have to work hard to try to write everything down. Also, there is a book on Catholic Christianity as well as one on Protestant Christianity that describes the basic beliefs of these faith traditions and the research that's looked at the relationship with mental health. So beliefs of Muslims and Christians. So I'm going to focus on these 2 great monotheistic religions. Of course, Judaism is the 3rd great monotheistic religion. And I will mention Judaism briefly, but it really will be focused on Islam, Muslims, and Christians. So these 2 religions are the largest of all major religious groups. They make up more than half of the entire world's population, 4.1 of 78 billion people. By 2035, Muslim births will exceed Christian births. By 2060, the number of Muslims and Christians will be almost equal at 3 billion each. Can Muslims and Christians relate to one another? The mental health and physical health of Muslims and Christians, I think, depend on the answer to that question. Now, the source for all this information is the Pew Research Foundation, which has done a multi-world survey of Muslims and Christians and other religious groups. Now, what are the core religious beliefs of Muslims? Now, when I talk about core religious beliefs, these are primarily based on the core religious scriptures, the Quran, of course, for Islam, and for Christianity, the Bible. Now, everybody is unique and different. Everyone is different. And so the beliefs of people are going to vary dramatically, whether a person is Muslim or Christian. It's going to, and their devoutness and involvement in religious practices will vary to a tremendous extent. So these are just the kind of the core beliefs that I've abstracted from the Holy Scriptures. So there are 2 major, actually 3 branches of Islam. There's the Sunni branch, which is about 80 to 85%. There's the Shia branch, which is about 10 to 15%. And then there is Sufism, which is about 5%. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've done a lot of research with Iranian investigators in the past and have many publications with researchers in the Shia Islam tradition, and also I've done a lot of research with a colleague of mine in Western China, which is an area. There are many Muslims in Western China, and we actually, Dr. Wong and I actually had a center at Ninchuan Medical University in Yinchuan, China, and we had a medical center, a center for Islamic mental health there. They've now shut that down with China being a little bit more strict on religion. But we had Dr. Wong was the director of an entire center there, and we were doing all sorts of research. But unfortunately, now Dr. Wong is at another university, so we will continue to do research on the mental health of Muslims in China. Now, currently, 24.1% of the world population, 1.8 billion people, are Muslim. By the year 2050, that will be 30%. Islam is a monotheistic religion, the worship of one God. The worship of one God. Tawhid. Tawhid is the Arabic word that describes the indivisible oneness of God, of Allah, as stated in the Quran. To attribute divinity to anything or anyone else is shirk, the unpardonable sin of polytheism, unless repentance is sought afterwards. So this is a really serious issue in Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, praise be unto him, is God's messenger, according to the Quran. The Prophet Muhammad is the role model for all believers. The Prophet Muhammad is the last in the chain of prophets that God has sent. He is called the seal of the prophets. The Prophet Muhammad is to be followed, not worshipped, as the Quran specifies. The Quran is the Word of God. The Word of God. Just as Jesus Christ is the Word of God within Christianity, the Quran is the Word of God in Islam. Devout Muslims adhere to the 5 pillars of Islam: the profession of faith, the Shahada, prayer, Salat, alms, zakat, fasting, Sawm, and the pilgrimage, Hajj. Muslims are a deeply religious people, and their faith is integrated into every area of life. When driving, when working, even when flying. When driving, I know that when I come to Saudi Arabia, I take a cab from the airport to the hotel. The cab driver is not playing pop music. He's playing the Quran being recited. Now, when I take a cab to the airport here in Durham, North Carolina, I'm not hearing the cab driver play a recitation of the Bible. But in Saudi Arabia and in many of the Middle Eastern countries and wherever there is a Muslim majority, you take a ride in a cab and you'll hear the Quran. And even when flying, here is the plane that I take when I fly from Washington, D.C. to Jeddah. Look at what is on the nose cone. God bless you. Every time I'm bored, I look at that phrase. It's really, American Airlines, United, Delta, there's no God bless you on the nose cone. But on the Saudi Arabian Airlines, there it is. The flight, in fact, begins with a prayer for the journey. In fact, it's a recitation of a prayer said by the Prophet Muhammad before he would go on travels. So the very start, right as you're on the runway taking off, the recitation of the prayer begins. So that's pretty neat, I think. What are the core beliefs of Christians? Major branches of Christianity are Catholic, Protestant, and Eastern and Oriental Orthodox. Currently, Christians make up 31% of the world population at 2.3 billion. By the year 2050, they will make up 2.9 billion and will make up 31.4% of the population. Christianity is a monotheistic religion, the worship of only one God, as in Islam. God is not divided in Christianity. but has three forms: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The best illustration of this is water. Water, H2O. Water comes in three forms. Comes in steam, comes in liquid, and comes in ice. All three forms are water, H2O. Water cannot be divided. Otherwise, it is no longer water, but becomes something else. The Christian Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, is not the same as the Trinity during the Prophet Muhammad's time. The Trinity in his time was part of the polytheistic beliefs of the Meccans. The three daughters of Allah, named Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Each daughter was worshipped at a separate shrine near Mecca, where Allah's shrine was located. The Prophet Muhammad's only exposure to Christians were Catholics, who appeared to be worshiping Mary, Jesus, and God, which he understood as the Christian Trinity. The Prophet Muhammad spent his life fighting against the polytheistic beliefs of his day. Many of his relatives died during this time when he was persecuted for his belief in one God, one indivisible God who should be worshipped, Tawhid. What does the Quran say about Jesus, Isa al-Masih? On the one hand, this is a quote out of the Quran: people of the book, do not go to excess in your religion, and do not say anything about God except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was nothing more than a messenger of God. His word directed at Mary a spirit from him. So believe in God and his messengers, and do not speak of a trinity. Stop this. That is better for you. God is only one. He is far above having a son. Everything in the heavens and earth belongs to him, and he is the best one to trust. They, the Jews, did not kill Jesus, nor did they crucify him, though it was made to appear like that to them. Those that disagreed about him are full of doubt, with no knowledge to follow, only supposition. They certainly did not kill him. God raised him up to himself. Again, from the Quran. Now, on the other hand, the Quran says a lot of additional things about Jesus. The angel said, Mary, God gives you news of a word from him, whose name will be the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, who will be held in honor in this world and the next, who will be one of those brought near to God. He will be one of the righteous. He will send him as a messenger to the children of Israel. Next, we favored some of the messengers above others. God spoke to some, others he raised in rank. We gave Jesus, son of Mary, our clear signs and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. Next, God said, Jesus, I will take you back and raise you up to me. I will purify you of the disbelievers. To the day of resurrection, I will make those who follow you superior to those who disbelieved. Then you will return to me, and I will judge between you regarding your differences. I think when he's saying, when the Quran is saying, then you will return to me, he's speaking to everybody, and I will judge between you, between all of us regarding our differences. So God will be the judge with regard to the differences. Next is God raised him up to himself. God is almighty and wise. There is not one of the people of the book who will not believe in Jesus before his death. And on the day of resurrection, he will be a witness against them. Boy, now that's pretty powerful. Jesus is the only prophet to be raised up to heaven by God himself, the Quran says, according to the Quran. The prophet Muhammad is, as narrated by Hurayrah, this is one of the hadith. The hour, the day of resurrection, will not be established until the Son of Mary, Jesus, descends amongst you as a just ruler. This is from Sahih Bukhari, and there is the citation. Sahih Bukhari is the most reputable of all of the hadith in terms of what the Prophet Muhammad said during his lifetime. Okay, so what are the core beliefs of the Christians? Christians worship Jesus Christ. They worship Jesus Christ. Is this shirk? Is this the unpardonable sin of polytheism, the worship of more than one God? Christians believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only God. Christians believe that Jesus Christ was fully God and fully man. And on the next slide, I'll show you some of the scriptures that indicate that. Christians believe that God, the one and only God, came into this world as a human person in Jesus Christ. Although Jesus was a teacher and role model, that was not the primary reason for his coming. Christians believe that God came into the world as Jesus Christ to be sacrificed for the sins of humans, so that people could once again come close to him, the sinless and perfect God, and live forever with God in heaven. Christians believe this action was the ultimate expression of God's love for his people, becoming a human and dying for them as a person. Because of what Jesus has done, Christians believe that they are saved from the death caused by sin and saved for reconciliation with God, peace with God, and the joy of serving God through their lives. The Jewish tradition in Jesus' time was making sacrifices in order to reconcile with God for the sins they had committed. This was done typically by sacrificing animals. Christians believe that after sacrificing himself by dying on the cross, Jesus Christ rose from the dead to rule forever as the one and only God in heaven and judge the living and the dead. Jesus Christ, this word, this name, Jesus Christ, may simply be considered another name for God. Indeed, Allah has 99 names according to Sahih Bukhari. And if you go into a Christian service, if you simply replace the word Jesus Christ with the word God or Allah, you'll be very comfortable. Christians follow, worship and pray to Jesus Christ. So when Christians pray to Jesus Christ, they believe they are praying to God, the one and only God, who is indivisible, Tawhid, but has appeared in three forms. So that's basically what Christians believe. A little bit more on this fully man, fully God. The Christian scriptures document this. In the Jewish scriptures, it says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." In John, the Gospel of John, it says, "In the beginning was the Word." They're referring to Jesus. "And the Word was God, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. So fully man, fully God. For in Christ all the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form. All the fullness of the deity. Truly God, truly man. This was decided on at the Council of Chalcedon back in 421. There were all sorts of different heresies going around, so the church had a council, and they decided on that, and it was decided on that Jesus Christ was, according to Christians, fully God, fully man. Christians now follow, now listen to this, Christians follow the truly man, but worship the fully God. Christians follow the fully man, but worship the fully God. There exists only one and only one God who is not divisible. Only this one God should be worshiped and allowed to rule over the life of the Muslim, Jew, and Christian. This belief is based on the first commandment in Exodus. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. We are all in slavery to some degree. You shall have no other gods before me. No other gods. So easy for us to make other gods. Money, our work, family. Muslims, Jews, and Christians must submit to God and abide by God's will to be truly healthy. Now, this is what I'm saying. Okay, so this is my opinion. Muslims, Jews, and Christians must submit to God and abide by God's will to be truly healthy, mentally, socially, physically, and spiritually. The core ethical beliefs and moral values are exactly the same between Muslims and Christians. Suicide, assisted suicide, abortion, sex before marriage, infidelity, importance of the family, honesty, dependability, care for the poor, all are exactly the same. And especially, love and treat your neighbor as yourself. Love and treat your neighbor as yourself. Moses, Jesus, and the Prophet Muhammad all emphasize this. If they all emphasize something, it's got to be pretty important. In Islam, the Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, love for your brother what you love for yourself. This is Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. This is a hadith, the most reputable of them all. And, okay. So care for the emotional and physical needs of the neighbor. Common belief. According to the Mishkat, the prophet said, God has no mercy for the one who has no mercy for the people. In fact, the prophet said that the angel of Revelation was so insistent on emphasizing the good treatment of neighbor that Muhammad thought that the neighbor might become a legal inheritor. Likewise, when a man came to the prophet and asked him how he could know if he was a good man or not, the prophet replied, find out from your neighbors what they think of you. Find out from your neighbors what they think of you. What does the Quran say about Christians as neighbors? The Holy Quran says that Christians are closer to Muslims than any other religion that exists on the face of the earth. You, prophet, are sure to find that the closest in affection towards the believers are those who say, we are Christians, for there are among them people devoted to learning and ascetics. These people are not given to arrogance, and when they listen to what has been sent down to the messenger, you will see their eyes overflowing with tears because they recognize the truth in it. They say, O Lord, we believe. So count us amongst the witnesses. Why should we not believe in God and in the truth that has come down to us when we long for our Lord to include us in the company of the righteous. For saying this, God has rewarded them with gardens graced with flowing streams, and there they will stay. That is the reward for those who do good. That's from the Quran, chapter 5, verses 82 to 85. Islam emphasizes the greatness, the magnificence, and the mercy of God. Christianity emphasizes the love, the grace, and the forgiveness of God. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Quran, this is the first verse in the Quran. And it begins every one of the 114 chapters of the Quran, except for one. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. We have much to learn from one another about the great, merciful, loving, and forgiving God that we serve. So now I'm going to get a little personal. I've been nervous about this, but I'm getting personal here. I'm stepping away from my role as an objective clinical researcher, and I'm doing that for complete transparency. So here goes. I was raised a devout Catholic. In 1984, I was born again as a conservative Protestant Christian. At that time, my life was completely transformed when I surrendered and submitted to Jesus Christ, God. When I pray to one, only one indivisible God, a personal God who knows and loves me, and whom I love and have submitted my life to and attempt to serve. Islam is an Arabic word meaning submission, and in the religious context, it means submission to the will of God. Muslim is from an Arabic word meaning a submitter to God. As a Christian, I am a submitter to the will of God, and therefore consider myself a Muslim. I feel as comfortable performing the prayers in a mosque as I've done with my Muslim brother Saad al-Shohaib as in a Christian church or in a Jewish synagogue. All Muslims, particularly devout Muslims, are my brothers and sisters. We both worship, love, submit to, and serve the one and only indivisible God. I believe that we must not just tolerate one another. We must respect and honor one another. And in fact, we need to go beyond that. We must truly love one another from the heart. This will lead to the greatest health for those in both of our religions. Can a researcher be this biased? It's clear that I'm biased. The answer is, I believe, yes. All clinical researchers are biased. That's just a fact of the matter. They are all testing a hypothesis on which careers and millions of dollars in grant funding may be riding on. You bet researchers are biased. I can tell you that. My hypothesis for 35 years since I was born again is that a person cannot be completely healthy, as I said, without submitting their life and will to God. However, this requires that I conduct my research in such a way that my personal bias influences that research as little as possible. Both my religion and scientific profession require complete transparency when describing the design, the course of the study, what was done in the study, statistical analyses, and interpretation of results. Complete transparency. This takes rigorous self-discipline and honesty for all of us. It's something that my faith, my religious faith, holds me to. Okay, so let's get on with talking about some research. A lot of this is in the book that Dr. Al-Shoaib and I wrote. There it is. Here's a summary of the findings in Muslim populations. This was a review of research since or prior to 2010. It's a systematic review. There has not been a systematic review done in the past 10 years of the more recent research. But there is a lot of research being done in Muslim populations now. A lot of it coming out of Saudi Arabia, but probably most of it is coming out of Iran. So let me just go through it quickly here. Depression. There have been a total of 444 quantitative studies. There were 13 of those in Muslims, in Muslim majority populations. Only 3% were in Muslim majority populations. Of those 13 studies, 92% found that there was less depression among those Muslims who are more devout in their religious faith. One study reported no association. Suicide. 4% of the studies were done in Muslim majority populations. Of those 5 studies, 80%, showed that there was less suicide among Muslims who are more devout. Anxiety, 299 total studies worldwide. Of those, 23 were done in Muslim populations, 8%. Of those 23, 68% found that there was less anxiety among Muslims who are more devout in their faith. And then one study found the opposite. Psychosis, 43 studies worldwide, only one study in Muslims. There was one study found a negative relationship with men, which means that there was more psychosis among Muslims who were more religious. Alcohol use abuse, 278 studies, 2 were in Muslims. Both of those found more devout faith was related to significantly less alcohol abuse or use. Drug use and abuse, 185 studies, only one study in Muslim populations, and that found less drug use and abuse in Muslims, more devout Muslims. We're talking about religiosity and health now, level of devoutness. What about positive mental health? So we've been talking about negative mental health, well-being, happiness, life satisfaction. 8 studies done in Muslims of the 326. All eight, 100% found that Muslims who were more devout in their faith had greater well-being, more happiness. Hope, 40 studies, only 1 in Muslims. There was no association in that particular one study. Optimism, there was again only 1 study in Muslims that did not find a relationship with religiosity. Meaning and purpose in life, no studies. Meaning and purpose in life, no studies in Muslim majority populations looking at religiosity and meaning and purpose in life. Self-esteem, there were 3 studies. 2 of those found greater self-esteem among Muslims who are more devout in their faith. And sense of control, 2 of those, 21 were in Muslims, and 1 of those found a greater sense of control among Muslims with a deeper religious faith. What about personality traits? Extroversion, 50 studies, 2 in Muslims. One of those studies found that, again, religious devoutness was associated with greater extroversion. Neuroticism, only 1 study in Muslims, and it found less neuroticism among the more devout. Conscientiousness, again, only 1 study, did not find an association. Agreeableness, 1 study. It did find that the more devoutly religious Muslim was more agreeable. Openness, the same finding. What about social health? 74 total studies, only 2 in Muslims. One of those finding that the more devout faith, the greater the social support. Marital stability, again, 2 studies, both finding that the more devout the religious faith, the greater the marital stability. Delinquency and crime, 3 studies in Muslims, and of those, 2 of those found less delinquency and crime associated with greater faith. Social capital, 1 study that did not find an association. Now, continuing here with health behaviors, cigarette smoking, 5 studies. 3 of those found that more devout Muslims smoked cigarettes less. Exercise, only 1 study. There was no relationship between exercise and devoutness of Muslims' faith. Diet, no studies, no systematic studies prior to the year 2010 looking at the relationship between diet and religiosity or level of faith in Muslims. Weight, 1 study, and it found that more devout Muslims actually weighed less than those who were less devout. Sexual behavior, only 1 study on sexual behavior, and that also found that sexual behavior was more conservative, fewer sexual partners, less sex outside of marriage among those who are more devout. Let's look at physical health. Heart disease, 5 studies in Muslims. 3 of those found that there was less heart disease among those who were more devout in their faith, and no studies found the opposite. There were 2 of those studies found no association. Hypertension, 5 studies in Muslim majority populations. 2 of those found lower rates of hypertension among those who are more devout, and 1 study found a higher rate of hypertension. Cerebrovascular disease, 9 studies, 2 in Muslims. Both of those studies found no association between degree of religious faith and stroke or cerebrovascular disease. Dementia, Alzheimer's disease, there have been no studies, not a single study in Muslim majority populations looking at the relationship between religiosity and dementia or Alzheimer's disease. However, there has been 1 study since then, since 2010. Remember, all of these studies are prior to 2010, finding that Muslim women who prayed 5 times a day in middle age developed less Alzheimer's disease as they grew older. 1 study. Okay, diabetes, 4 studies, 3/4 found that diabetics who were Muslim, who were more devout in their faith, had better control of their diabetes. Maybe some of that had to do with going on the pilgrimage, the Hajj. Cholesterol, triglyceride, 7 studies, nearly 1/3 of all of the studies in the world. 5 of those 7 finding lower cholesterol, lower triglycerides among those with a stronger faith. Immune function, 3 studies. 1 of those 3 found better immune function among Muslims. And then endocrine function, there have been no studies in Muslim populations looking at epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, those stress hormones, and level of faith. I think that would be a terrific study, looking at the relationship between religiosity among Muslims, looking at their cortisol levels, their epinephrine and norepinephrine levels. Still to be done. So in summary, I guess we're still going. Cancer, 29 studies, none in Muslims prior to the year 2010. Self-rated health, of the 50 studies worldwide, none in Muslims. And of mortality, length of lifespan, none in Muslim populations. I don't think there's been one done in the last 10 years either. So there still remains no long-term studies. Now, these studies are not easy to do. You got to follow people for decades, for 20, 25, 30 years. Not all of them. You know, if you get an older population and you might 5, 10 years might do, but you really got to follow people over time so the effect can build. but no studies yet in Muslim populations. Now, what about comparing mental, social, behavioral, and physical health in Muslims versus non-Muslims? Now we're comparing Muslims with non-Muslim populations. So there have been 3 studies done comparing Muslims and non-Muslims. 2/3 of those studies found that there was less depression among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. And one of those studies found that there was more depression among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. Suicide. 43 studies found less suicide among Muslims compared to 14% finding more suicide, 14% reporting mixed findings depending on how you measured religiosity in the Muslim population, and 29% of studies found that the suicide rate was the same. And again, we're talking about only 7 studies here. Anxiety, now this is interesting. So compared to other religious faiths, only 14%, only I believe one of those studies on anxiety showed less anxiety among Muslims. And 86% found more anxiety among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. Again, we're only talking about 7 studies. That I think those studies definitely need to be replicated. Psychosis, 2 studies showing that Muslims had less psychosis than did non-Muslims. Alcohol abuse, 3/4, 9 out of 12 studies found less alcohol use and abuse among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. Drug use, half of the studies found less drug use among Muslims versus non-Muslims, and 50% found the same. Well-being, one study found worse well-being. Actually it was the same. So in terms of well-being, one study compared Muslims, non-Muslims, that found that there was no difference. Optimism, that's where the optimism was lower in 2 of the 3 studies, and one of those studies reported mixed results. Sense of control, pretty much even across the board, a third in terms of better, 1 study in terms of worse, mixed results in 33%. Social support, 2 studies, both finding more social support among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. Marital stability, 1 found better, 1 found worse. Delinquency and crime, 2/3 of those studies reported less of it among Muslims compared to non-Muslims, and social capital, 4 among studies, total 50-50 in terms of better or worse social capital. Cigarette smoking, generally the same, or if anything better among Muslims than non-Muslims. Exercise tends to be worse among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. So that's an area that needs some work among the more devout Muslims. Need to get exercise. Walk to the mosque. That's the key. Diet. 25% better than non-Muslims, 50% worse. Weight, about 50-50. About 57% better than non-Muslims, 53% worse. Extramarital sex, 2/3 finding less among Muslims compared to non-Muslims. Physical health, pretty much across the board here, 10 studies. 20%, which would be 2 studies, finding less heart disease, 40% finding more heart disease, and 20% are reporting mixed results. Hypertension, 75% better than non-Muslims. 1 study finding worse, or 2 studies finding worse than non-Muslims. Cardiovascular disease, 2 studies, or cerebrovascular disease. Sorry, I'm trying to rush here because I want to leave 30 minutes for questions so I can answer some questions. Dementia, no studies comparing Muslims and non-Muslims. Stroke, 2 studies, less stroke among the more devout Muslims. And that goes with lower rates of hypertension as well. Diabetes, A third of the studies, 2 studies showing worse than non-Muslims, 2 studies finding better than non-Muslims. Cholesterol, 2/3 of studies showing that Muslims have lower cholesterol or triglycerides compared to non-Muslims. There are only 2 studies on immune functioning. One of those showed worse immune functioning and one found the same. Endocrine function, no studies. Nothing on cortisol levels or epinephrine, norepinephrine. Cancer, 37% of studies showed less cancer than non-Muslims, and 42% found about the same. Self-rated health, half of them found worse health, self-rated health compared to non-Muslims, 13% better, 37% the same. Mortality, 43% found greater longevity among Muslims, 36% found lower, shorter longevity among Muslims, 14% the same. Okay, here's a study we did in Iran. 60 hemodialysis patients were randomized to either listening to the Quran being recited or a control group. Patients were assessed by the State Trait Anxiety Inventory, which is the classic study of anxiety symptoms. Those in the intervention group that listened to the Quran being recited, their anxiety scores dropped from 128 down to 82, compared to the control group whose anxiety actually increased a little bit. The between subject comparisons that followed after adjusting for the baseline differences indicated that anxiety was a significant reduction in the intervention compared to the no treatment control group. And the Cohen's d there was a 1.0. 1.0, anything above 0.80 is considered a large effect. This was above a large effect, a 1.03. Here is the graph. There is the anxiety on one axis, time in terms of months. This was over 1 month. You can see here visually that those anxiety scores dropped among those listening to the Quran being recited. We also did a study in this same population looking at depression, and you see exactly the same effect. So listening to the Quran, if you're a hemodialysis patient and you're anxious, is the way to go. What about clinical applications? Should we include or not include religion in the treatment of Muslim patients? We created man. We know what his soul whispers to him. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. Now that is life itself. This is the beginning of health, real health and well-being. This verse expresses the idea that God is close, closer than even life itself. The reason why, the jugular vein in the prophet's time, this is how you killed people. You tried to slit their, in war, you tried to get the jugular vein because that was it. After the jugular vein was cut, that was it. So the jugular vein was literally considered synonymous with life itself. The best way for a person to experience good mental health is by developing a close connection with God and experiencing God's love, mercy, and practical help that He can provide as they submit, love, and serve Him. How can we ignore this responsibility for caring for people who have emotional illness and experiencing deep inner pain? How can we ignore this as therapists, as clinicians? We've got to address their religious faith. If this is true, if indeed getting close to God is the way to mental health, we need to address it in one way or another. It needs to be sensitive. So is it ethical for therapists to bring this up? Absolutely. Should therapists bring it up? Yes. They should. I would argue that it's unethical to ignore this great potential source of healing based on what we know now from systematic research, quantitative research, including randomized controlled trials. How can you just go on and ignore this? That's what the world has been doing. They have been ignoring it. So here are the clinical applications. Take a spiritual history. Number one, respect, value the religious beliefs of the patient, including those without beliefs. Honor that. It really has to be patient-centered. There can be no pushing one's personal beliefs on patients. You can't do that in a clinical setting. Patients are too dependent on you to do that. But what you do is you can identify what their beliefs are, and you can respect and honor those beliefs, and you can support those beliefs as resources. And in doing that, that's a form of loving your neighbor by doing that. It's a form of loving your neighbor by respecting and honoring their beliefs. Now, what if the beliefs are creating psychotic symptoms or they're worsening their mental health? In that case, it's probably best to, well, first of all, if they're psychotic, you give them antipsychotic medication. That's the way to handle that. But, if their beliefs are actually feeding into the problem, the emotional problem, it's best to wait, maybe be kind of a little bit non-committal, but say, okay, well, we'll share that more. Ask more about it. Get more information about it. Learn more about how those beliefs are affecting or are causing or contributing to the mental health problem. And, consider religiously integrated psychotherapy from a Muslim perspective. So let's talk maybe about that. Well, before that, let's talk about the spiritual history. All the three major world psychiatric associations all recommend taking a spiritual history. So if you think, oh, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable doing it, well, you're supposed to do it according to the World Psychiatric Association, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the American Psychiatric Association. All of them are encouraging taking a spiritual history of psychiatric patients. So why are we not doing it? Why are we not even, that's the standard of care right now. So this is kind of a long spiritual history here. Do you consider yourself a religious or spiritual person, or neither? If religious or spiritual, ask, explain to me what you mean by that. Because as I said earlier, being religious or spiritual can be something very different for virtually every single person. If they're neither religious nor spiritual, ask them, was that always so? And if no, ask, when did that change and why? Then just end the spiritual history. But you may want to return to that after you've developed a therapeutic relationship. Because, this is the initial spiritual history. This is not, after you develop a relationship yet. And so you may want to save some of these questions until the person knows you and trusts you. And you know how you build up that trust is by respecting and honoring their religious beliefs or non-belief. Next, if they're religious or spiritual, do you have any religious or spiritual beliefs that provide comfort? If yes, explain to me how your religious beliefs provide comfort. If no, is there a particular reason why your beliefs don't provide comfort? Next, do you have any religious or spiritual beliefs that cause you to feel stressed? Certainly, people have, certainly in Christianity, there's plenty of people who are worried about going to hell. I'm sure that's true in Islam too. There ought to be some anxiety there, especially as you get close to death. People must be wondering where they're going. So it can be a source of stress. And talking about sharing that, a lot of times people will not share that with anyone that they don't trust very much. They won't even share it with family members, Okay, and then explain, how are your religious beliefs causing stress in your life? Do you have any spiritual or religious beliefs that might influence your willingness to take medication, receive psychotherapy, or receive other treatments that may be offered as part of your mental health care? Are you an active member of a faith community, such as a church, synagogue, mosque, or temple? If yes, how supportive has your faith community been in helping you? And if no, why not? Why hasn't it been supportive? Tell me a little bit about the spiritual or religious environment in which you were raised. Were either of your parents religious? When you were a child, were your experiences positive or negative ones in your family environment with regard to religion? Have you ever had a significant change in your spiritual or religious life, either an increase or a decrease? If yes, tell me about that change. Why did it occur? Do you wish to incorporate your spiritual or religious beliefs in your treatment? If yes, how would you like to do this? Do you have any other spiritual needs or concerns that you would like addressed in your mental health care? So all of this is detailed in this source. Now, what about religiously integrated psychotherapy? A recent review, you ought to be aware of this, of more than 100 randomized controlled trials, there it is on the slide, has summarized the findings. And they're pretty good. They're certainly good enough to warrant integrating religion into psychotherapy. I can promise you that. But get the article. It's in one of the flagship journals of the American Psychological Association, Journal of Clinical Psychology. Here are some examples. Religiously integrated cognitive behavioral therapy for depression. We have Muslim therapists and patient workbooks, both Shia and Sunni, on our website. There is the link. So you can download them for free, total free, and you can use them in treating anxiety or depression in your Muslim patients. There is now religiously, spiritually integrated cognitive processing therapy for moral injury in the setting of severe trauma. And if you want a copy of that, I think I've got the email address for the Muslim version of the integrated CPT for severe trauma, or send me an email and I'll send you the email. Also, we have a pastoral care for moral injury that Muslim clergy can utilize when counseling patients, both therapists, Muslim clergy, as well as patient workbooks. There's my email address on the slide. Further resources, Crossroads. I write a monthly e-newsletter. Go to our website, sign up for it, please. It reviews all of the most recent research. Here are the two books by Dr. Al-Shohaib and myself. Here's a little book that I wrote on God's love. You are my beloved. We are all God's beloved. Really? So that's the question. Is that really true? And so I've written this little book, 24 chapters. One chapter, Does God Love Muslims? And I think you would enjoy it. It's a personal book. It's a great, I think it's the best book I have ever written. Of the 54 books, this is number one. All right, if you want to come spend a week with us here in Durham, that is next August, come to our 5-day summer research workshop. We'll teach you how to do research. We've had professors from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Stanford come to our workshop, including a Muslim professor from Stanford, psychiatry professor. We've got partial tuition scholarships. If you don't have enough money, if you're in an underdeveloped country, we have a full scholarship, including your board and room, tuition, travel, plane fare, taxi to the airport, the whole thing paid. But you got to be in an underdeveloped country. So if you know someone who's an academician, they've got to have potential. There's real competition there's only about 8 scholarships that we've got. I think maybe only 2 for next year. Let them know about this. Here's our website, and we've got 20 minutes, and I'm now going to stop sharing. And also, I'm going to continue the recording because I want to, we have only 55 questions, and we've got 20 minutes to answer them. So, I'll do my best here. Let me just figure out a way to get up to one of the first ones here. those who asked the first question should be okay. About 4 to 6 people have their microphone. Okay, that one's taken care of. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Annette.
Welcome, Doc.
Cool. From Logan, love to have a copy of the PDF. Send me an email, okay? Don't give me your email. Send me an email. Octavio, as I said, hello from Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. Coney, please send me a PDF. Again, send me your email. Let's see here. Yep. How are Muslim Christians identified? Self-identification. Yeah, everything is self-identified. Chris Cook, I will be talking to you about this outside the seminar, but what you have said about water, steam, liquid, ice is technically, isn't that funny? I can't see it. I can't see what he said, but let me see if I can go down a little bit. I can't see it. What has he said is a little bit more complicated than that. I'm sure it is. Chris Cook, of course, is a theologian, a card-carrying PhD Christian theologian. So I know it's more complicated, but for this purpose, it's simple enough. So anyway, water analogy is modalism, heresy within okay. So I knew I would get a little bit of that. Meant to say, how are Muslim Christians defined by self-identification? Yeah, okay, that. Correction, the most reputable Sunni hadith, there is a difference. When do we get mental health? Where do we get it? When do we get mental health in Islam? I mean, the book, if it's the book, just get it online. You can get it on Amazon. Let's see. Part 2, is there a part 1? No, there's not a part 1. This is it. And you're not going to have to deal with me in the future for about 9 months. We'll have other people giving this talk. How long is the seminar? It's 90 minutes now because, I want to answer some questions, but it's 60 minutes typically. And let's see here. Since most of the studies were performed in Muslim majority studies, would be good to do study U.S. Muslim. I agree totally. Yes, Muslims in the U.S. Now, you know that Muslims in the U.S., that may not be a fair comparison, although religiosity within Muslims certainly may be fair. I was thinking of Muslims versus non-Muslims, because Muslims in the U.S. are under unusual pressures that, that Christians in the U.S. are not under. As a minority religion, but level of religiosity should be buffering. So if you examine the buffering effect, that may be something. So that's not necessarily the median, that's the buffering effect. What is the relationship between stress level and mental health among Muslims in religious Muslims versus non-religious Muslims? That would be a moderating effect. Okay. So let's see, let's go here. Annette, thank you for that. Correction, self-inflicted, not to mention moral stigma behind the problem. Okay, from Kenya, there is no sound. Sorry about that. I wish there was sound in Kenya. Okay, anxiety lowering with Quran makes sense if person identifies as devout. Yeah, it really makes a difference, I think, with anxiety, if you're devout or not. If you're a Muslim, based on the research that I'm aware of. Is it to recite in a melodious way? Yes, I believe it is melodious. When the Quran is recited by the experts, I do believe it is done in a melodious way. I think also that our study did it in a melodious way. Yes, okay, great. So Rumesa answered that one for us. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the expertise. I'm like a bonehead in terms of both Christian theology and Islamic theology. So you just got to remember that. Bonehead, okay, it means you read the Quran in a melodious way. Let's see if I can get it. Okay, FICA, let me see if I can go back a little. The effect, okay, effect on anxiety is intervention related to listening, not reading. Well, you know, the research so far has been listening to the Quran being recited. I'd love to see some research on it being, you know, read and memorized. I know my colleague in Saudi Arabia memorizes the Quran. Here, I've got to hold 1 second here. My voice activated software has turned on, so I'm going to exit full screen just for a moment here. I'm going to exit. And no, I don't want to exit. I don't want to end the slideshow. Hold 1 second here. Okay. I'm afraid I've lost everybody. I'm afraid that I've lost. Start. I've lost everybody. Okay.
We're still here.
Oh, you're still there. Okay, great. But I've lost I may have my audio, but I don't have my video. Let me see. Okay, maybe I do have my video.
We have both with you.
Okay, so that's good. Thanks, Lee. I really appreciate it. Let me now get full screen.
Harold, I can see you.